Hello everyone! This episode is kind of a follow-up episode on my last episode where I argued that not all dogs necessarily need to be off-leash everywhere and anywhere all the time. And it's also inspired by the last Cog Dog Radio episode, that's Tara Stremming's excellent podcast, that I listened to on my way to a client the other day. On this episode, I'll link to it in the show notes so you can listen as well. Sarah talks to Tara Stillwell. They talk about Tara's forest school and how dogs and humans benefit from being in nature. Let me just dive right in and pick back up where I left off in the last episode. You know that for me personally, off-leash is pretty much a non-negotiable. It's not because I believe this is a welfare necessity, but because I see myself as a person who moves through life with dogs off-leash. This is an extremely important lifestyle thing for myself. Like other people may see themselves as people driving electrical cars, or people who only ride bicycles and refuse to fly, or maybe their political views or their gender identity is at the center of who they see themselves to be, at the very core, at their essence. So for me, there are few things at the center, but moving through the world fearlessly and with my dogs off leash is a big one. And it is pretty central. I don't think it's the most central, but it is very close. I want to point out that for me, this whole off-leash shtick is really very much about myself and not about my welfare beliefs. I am not entirely sure about my welfare beliefs in general because I am so heavily biased by my own personal needs. The older I get, the more I recognize that people are so different. When I was very young, I used to think people are very different, like everyone's super unique. And then I grew up to learn that actually we're all pretty much the same, we're all primates. There's not that much difference between us, and I used to think that for the majority of my life. But like in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been moving in the other direction again, where it feels like actually the things that seem totally normal and important to me are weird to other people or unimportant to other people, and vice versa. So who knows? At this point, I only know that there is a lot that I do not know. In any case, in Tara's forest school, for example, that Sarah and Tara talked about, there's a lot of freedom and a lot of off-leash time in the woods, and I can imagine how much the dogs in that program enjoy it. I just got invited to visit folks in Austria, so that's where I spent 2 weeks recently, and the best part of it was being able to run around the woods with game without meeting another human soul every single day. It was amazing. I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world. So yes, big thumbs up for me. That said, being able to do this is a ginormous privilege. It's not the way the global majority of humans live, and it's not the way the global majority of dogs live either. What does the global majority even look like? I believe if you're upper middle class or upper class, and that's where you have resided all your life, and that's also the social stratum that you have had dogs in, you may not be aware that this is not the norm. This is not the norm. The global majority of humans may not have hot water, they may not have running water at all or only a few hours every day. They may not have a great sewage system. They certainly don't have a yard with a 6 feet tall fence or an electrical fence for their dog. They don't take their dog to a groomer or to puppy classes. There are other things that are higher up in their list of priorities, obviously. To put your dog very high in your list of priorities in your life is a ginormous privilege. It is really important that we become aware of that. If we're not aware of that, it is so easy to look down on other people who just live very different lives. And that's just not fair. The fact that you are privileged in like the vast majority of cases, this is not something you have earned. It is something that has randomly happened to you. So you kind of won the lottery, metaphorically speaking, right? So you were born in a country that was at peace. You were born into an upper middle class or a upper class family. Maybe there was generational wealth. All of this is a privilege and not the norm. I just find this to be really important when it comes to relating to the people around us. And if you never leave that bubble, or hardly ever leave that bubble, it is easy to assume that everyone lives that way, but it is very much not like that. So the global majority of dogs have a lot of freedom, they live free-roaming lives, and have lots of social interactions pretty much from the day they're born. That is not the case for upper middle class and upper class pet or sports dogs. If you're a dog trainer listening to this and you're charging money for training dogs, the global majority of dogs and people are not your clients because, among other reasons, they couldn't afford you, even if they wanted to. And they probably, as I said before, have other priorities that are way more important than pampering a dog. The global majority of dogs are not what in the global north is called a pet dog or a sport dog. And the majority of the global majority of dogs do not suffer from any behavioral problem whatsoever. Or we could look at it from the other angle, right? The global majority of people don't see their dogs as having problems. Both of these sides matter, right? It's only a problem if it is a problem to you. If it's not a problem to your dog and it's not a problem to you, it's not a problem. I don't know if the majority of all dogs live in the city, but a lot of dogs live in cities just like a lot of humans do. However, the majority of dogs and humans all over the world do not live in fancy apartments, but in makeshift dwellings. And a lot of them have dogs. These dogs are raised on a diet of being in an urban environment, and that's where they thrive. They don't go crazy when a bus goes by, they don't chase cars, they are able to sleep on a sunny sidewalk while hundreds of people walk past. They wander and search for food, they're often slightly overweight if there is a lot of food available at the trash, and they have friends who are dogs and friends who are humans. They probably also have enemies who are dogs and enemies who are humans. They are generally socially savvy. So if a dog was a jerk, that dog would have few reproductive opportunities, few or no human or dog friends, and they might either be shot by a human or ganged up on by other dogs, or just live a solitary life until they die. Other dogs may either defend their ecological niche against that dog, or they may leave that niche to that dog, but then that dog will once again be on their own. That's okay too. Unlike wolves, dogs don't need stable social groups. They can be solitary if they want to. That's because they don't hunt, they scavenge. And when scavenging, being a loner isn't a disadvantage to the same degree it is when you hunt and you need a group in order to be able to bring down a large enough animal to feed on. Dogs still have friends, but they are more socially flexible, and having canine friends isn't a necessity for survival, but a perk of life. Anyways, my point here is that it is so easy to get lost in the world of the upper middle class and above for those who come from that class. I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that this is a minority of people and dogs. The behavioral challenges they present are also unique to their class, because this class privilege comes with a loss of freedom. It's a golden cage, and it can be hard to live in a golden cage for both humans and dogs in a very distinct way that is completely different from the survival-related hardships of the global majority. I just wanted to put this out here for food for thought. I myself have been raised on a diet of freedom in the woods. I was a free-range kid, and my childhood memories are almost entirely outdoors, running through the woods, exploring caves with other neighborhood kids, climbing trees, and getting back home with 30 feet, hungry and content. I've adapted to city life, but visiting Austria reminded me that I miss being in the middle of nowhere. Game was raised on a diet of freedom and off-leash woods too. She too has adapted to city life, but she has never looked quite as cheerful and happy as Chai when we're walking in the city. And that may be because Chai only knows city life. For Chai, the sidewalks, markets, streets, and urban parks is where she's been raised. This is her natural environment. She has never lived anywhere but a city of 9 million people and lots of dogs, traffic, and chaos. Most dogs and people I know who have been born and raised in the city, they don't miss a life or a way of life that they aren't familiar with. In terms of people, some are even afraid of the countryside. It's amusing to me, but I acknowledge that that is because I'm from the countryside. I grew up on the very outskirts of a town of, I think, back then, it was like 6,000 people. Of course, I'm not scared of the middle of nowhere. The middle of nowhere is my happy place. I don't believe that this is an inherently human trait, though. I believe it is, at least to a degree, and I'm not sure to what degree, based on where one spends the formative period of one's life. Like where you as a human spend your sensitive socialization period. And I imagine something similar is true for dogs. The urban dogs who roam freely around me seem very chill and very content with exactly where they are. They live in the moment, of course. They aren't locked into crates or apartments either, and they have a lot of agency. I believe, and this is of course no more than a just so story, that the reason they are able to do very well is that this is where they've always been, and that unlike upper middle class and upper class dogs, they're not asked to live in golden cages. Many dogs will thrive under these conditions, with thriving being operationalized as me observing them going about their day with content body language. That's it for today. I just wanted to share a couple thoughts with you all. If you like this episode or this podcast, rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Shout out to Anna Tank Dogs in New York City who just left me a lovely review, and she'll take care of you all if you have New York City dog training or dog walking needs. Alright, happy training you all, and stay dangerous. I'll see you in a month. Or, well, you'll hear me in a month.